The courthouse steps felt colder than they should have been for mid-September. I stood there, clutching the manila envelope containing my divorce papers, watching Daniel drive away with her in the passenger seat. Sophia, the maid I'd hired 6 months ago to help with the house while I worked double shifts at the hospital, the woman who'd smiled at me every morning, accepted my generous pay, and apparently spent her afternoons in my bed with my husband. Ex-husband now. The word tasted like copper in my mouth. I didn't cry. I think I'd run out of tears somewhere between finding them together in our bedroom and sitting across from Daniel in the mediator's office, listening to him explain how Sophia understood him better, and how our marriage had been dead for years anyway. 7 years. We'd been married for 7 years, and apparently I'd been too busy saving lives to notice mine was falling apart. The autumn wind picked up, carrying the scent of exhaust and dying leaves. I wrapped my thin cardigan tighter around my shoulders, the same cardigan I'd worn to work this morning, back when I still had a marriage, still had a home. Daniel had kept the house, of course. His lawyer had been better than my court-appointed one. I'd get half of what was left after the mortgage, which amounted to almost nothing. The savings account we'd built together had mysteriously dwindled to nearly zero over the past 6 months, probably spent on Sophia's new wardrobe. I'd seen the designer bags in what used to be my closet. My phone buzzed. A text from my supervisor. Sorry about your shift tomorrow. Budget cuts. We'll call you when we need you. Perfect. Divorced and jobless in the same day. I walked down the steps, my worn sneakers, the only comfortable shoes I owned after 12-hour shifts, scraping against the concrete. The parking lot stretched before me, mostly empty now as the courthouse closed for the day. I'd taken an Uber here because Daniel had taken my name off the insurance for our car last week, another thing his lawyer had somehow made legal. The bus stop was 3 blocks away. I started walking, my hospital badge still clipped to my cardigan, swaying with each step. Elena Morrison, RN. The badge didn't mention that Elena Morrison was now a 32-year-old divorced woman with $847 in her checking account and nowhere to sleep tonight. My best friend Rachel had offered her couch, but I couldn't face her sympathy right now. Couldn't face anyone. I just needed to move, to keep putting one foot in front of the other until I figured out what came next. I didn't see the puddle until I stepped in it. Cold water soaked through my sneaker and I stumbled, my bag slipping from my shoulder. The manila envelope fell, papers scattering across the wet sidewalk. The divorce decree, the asset division, the end of everything I'd built. Shit, I whispered, dropping to my knees on the dirty concrete. I gathered the papers with shaking hands, trying to keep them from the spreading puddle. Some were already wet, the ink beginning to smear. Even my divorce couldn't stay intact. A shadow fell over me. Those look important. The voice was deep, accented, Italian maybe, and so smooth it seemed to wrap around each word with deliberate precision. I looked up, squinting against the late afternoon sun behind him. He was tall. That was my first impression. Tall and dressed in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my annual salary had been. The fabric caught the light like liquid mercury, perfectly tailored to broad shoulders that tapered to a narrow waist. His shoes were Italian leather, polished to a mirror shine, and somehow spotless despite the dirty sidewalk. But it was his face that made my breath catch. Sharp jawline, dark stubble that looked intentional rather than lazy, and eyes so dark they were nearly black. He couldn't have been much older than 40, but there was something ancient in his gaze, something that suggested he'd seen things that aged a person beyond years. A thin scar cut through his left eyebrow, silvery against olive skin, and he was looking at me like I was the only person in the world. Yes, I stammered, scrambling to gather the last of the papers. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. You're apologizing to me? Something flickered in those dark eyes. Amusement, maybe. For what? For existing in a place I happened to be walking? Heat crept up my neck. I must have looked pathetic, kneeling in a puddle with my soggy divorce papers, my hospital badge declaring my now questionable employment status. He bent down, a smooth, controlled movement, and picked up the last paper. I watched his eyes scan it briefly. The divorce decree, with Daniel's signature bold and confident next to my shaky one. Congratulations, he said, handing it back to me. His fingers brushed mine for just a second, and I felt the warmth of his skin, the calluses on his palm that seemed wrong for someone in such an expensive suit. Or condolences. I'm never sure which is appropriate. Condolences, I said quietly, standing up. My knees were wet now too, dirt staining my scrubs underneath my cardigan. Definitely condolences. He studied me for a moment, his expression unreadable. Behind him, I noticed a black Mercedes idling at the curb, the kind with tinted windows so dark I couldn't see inside. A man in a matching black suit stood beside the rear door, his posture too rigid to be casual. He was watching us, one hand resting near his hip, in a way that made me think of shoulder holsters and concealed weapons. "You're hurt," the man in front of me said, and it wasn't a question. I followed his gaze to my hand. Blood welled from my palm where I'd scraped it on the concrete. I hadn't even felt it. "It's nothing," I said automatically. Occupational habit. I'd stitched up wounds 10 times worse without flinching. "Nothing," he repeated, like he was testing the word. Then he reached into his jacket, another smooth, practiced movement, and pulled out a pristine white handkerchief, monogrammed. The letters VM embroidered in black silk thread. "I can't," I started. "You can." He took my wrist, his grip gentle but absolutely firm, and wrapped the handkerchief around my palm. His fingers worked with surprising care, creating a neat bandage. "There. Now it's not nothing. It's handled." I stared at the white fabric, already blooming red in the center. "I'll wash it and return it. Keep it." He released my wrist but didn't step back. We were standing too close, closer than strangers should stand. I could smell his cologne now, cedar and something darker, like smoke and aged leather. Consider it a divorce present. "I don't even know your name," I said, clutching my papers against my chest like a shield. "No," he agreed, that trace of amusement returning to his eyes. "You don't." The man by the Mercedes cleared his throat quietly. The stranger in the expensive suit glanced back, some wordless communication passing between them, then returned his attention to me. "You're going to the bus stop." Another statement, not a question. 3 blocks that way, in wet shoes, with an injured hand, and papers you can barely hold. "I'll manage," I said, even though we both knew it was a lie. "I'm sure you will." He studied me for another heartbeat, his dark eyes moving across my face like he was memorizing it. "You look like someone who always manages. But you don't have to. Not today." He stepped aside, gesturing toward the Mercedes. The rear door was already open, held by the rigid man in black. Every instinct I had screamed danger, strange man, expensive car, driver with a gun. This was how horror stories started, how women ended up on true crime podcasts, but I was so tired. Tired of managing, tired of being strong, tired of standing on my own 2 feet when everything beneath me kept crumbling. "I don't accept rides from strangers," I said, but my voice lacked conviction. "Then I suppose you'll need to learn my name." He extended his hand, formal as a business introduction. "Vincenzo." I stared at his hand. There was a ring on his smallest finger. Thick gold with a crest I didn't recognize. Old family money. Or something else entirely. "Elena," I said, taking his hand. His grip was warm, solid, safe somehow, despite everything that said it shouldn't be. "Elena," he repeated, like he was testing how my name felt in his mouth. "Where are you going, Elena?" "I don't know," I admitted. The truth felt easier than lying. I don't know." Something shifted in his expression. Softened, maybe, though that word seemed wrong for a face that looked carved from stone. "Then let me take you somewhere you can figure it out." He gestured to the car again. No obligations. No expectations. Just a warm ride and time to breathe. I should have said no. Should have walked away. Taken the bus. Figured it out on my own like I always did. Instead, I heard myself say, "Okay." His smile was slight, barely there, but it transformed his face completely. "Good." He placed a hand on the small of my back, just the lightest pressure, and guided me toward the Mercedes. The touch burned through my thin cardigan like a brand. The rigid man in black nodded once as we approached. "Mr. Marchesi. Mr. Marchesi. Vincenzo Marchesi." The name tickled something in the back of my mind. Some news story or whispered conversation at the hospital. But exhaustion had turned my thoughts to fog. I slid into the back seat. The interior smelled like leather and that same cedar cologne. The seats were heated, warming my cold, wet body immediately. Vincenzo followed me in, the door closing with a heavy, expensive thunk that sealed us in comfortable darkness. The driver got in without a word, and we pulled away from the curb. I looked back once, watching the courthouse disappear behind tinted windows. Somewhere in there, I'd signed away 7 years of my life. And now I was in a stranger's car, wearing his monogrammed handkerchief around my bleeding palm, driving toward an unknown destination. The papers crinkled in my lap. Vincenzo glanced at them, then at me. "He's an idiot," he said quietly. "What? Your husband. Ex-husband." He nodded toward the papers. "Any man who would let you go is either an idiot or blind, possibly both." I didn't know what to say to that. Daniel had said I was too focused on work, too tired, too boring, that Sophia was spontaneous and exciting and made him feel young again, that I'd let myself go. "He married the maid," I heard myself say. "Tomorrow. He's marrying her tomorrow." Vincenzo's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Fast. "They've been together for 6 months. I just didn't know until I came home early one day and—" I trailed off. He didn't need those details. Nobody did. "Where is this wedding taking place?" His voice had gone very quiet. "I don't know. I don't care." That was a lie, too. I cared desperately. Painfully. "Some restaurant he loves. Casa... something. I can't remember. Casa Rossi," Vincenzo said, and there was something dark in his tone. "On 5th Avenue. "Yes, that's it." I looked at him sharply. "How did you know?" "I know many things, Elena." He met my gaze, and I saw something flicker in those dark eyes. Something that might have been fury or promise or both. "And Casa Rossi. Let's say I have an interest in that establishment." The way he said interest made my skin prickle. We drove in silence for a few moments. I watched the city pass by through tinted windows, people walking home from work, couples holding hands, a whole world continuing while mine had ended. "We're here," the driver announced, and I realized I had no idea how much time had passed. The Mercedes stopped in front of a hotel. Not just any hotel. The Palazzo, 5-star luxury, the kind of place where a single night's stay cost more than my monthly rent used to. "I can't afford," I started. "You're not paying." Vincenzo was already out of the car, extending his hand to help me out. "This is what I meant by somewhere you can figure things out. Stay here tonight. Tomorrow, you decide what comes next. No obligations." I took his hand and stepped out onto the pristine sidewalk. A doorman in a burgundy uniform opened the brass doors, greeting Vincenzo by name, Mr. Marchesi. Everyone seemed to know Mr. Marchesi. "Why are you doing this?" I asked, as he led me through a lobby that looked like something from a movie. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, art that probably cost millions. He stopped at the elevator, pressing the button for the penthouse level. "Because today you needed someone to do something kind, and I happened to be there. You don't know me." "No," he agreed, "but I'd like to." The elevator doors opened. He guided me inside with that same gentle pressure on my lower back. The doors closed, trapping us in a small space that smelled like him. Cedar and smoke and something dangerous underneath. I watched our reflection in the polished brass doors, me in my stained cardigan and wet shoes, clutching soggy divorce papers, him in his perfect suit, standing closer than necessary, his dark eyes fixed on me like I was the most fascinating thing he'd ever seen. "This is crazy," I whispered. "Yes," he said, "it is." The elevator rose, carrying us toward whatever came next, toward the penthouse, toward tomorrow, toward answers I wasn't sure I wanted, toward a man whose name I'd only just learned but whose presence already felt like being pulled into orbit around something massive and inescapable. The doors opened, revealing a hallway with only 2 entrances. Vincenzo produced a keycard from his pocket and opened the one on the right. My mouth went dry. This wasn't a hotel room. This was his room. His penthouse. "Come," he said, and stepped inside. I stood at the threshold, every self-preservation instinct screaming at me to run, but where would I go? Back to the street? To Rachel's couch? To some cheap motel with my $847 and nowhere else to turn? I stepped inside, and the door closed behind me with a soft, final click. The penthouse was obscene in its luxury. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, the skyline glittering like scattered diamonds against the darkening sky. The furniture was all clean lines and expensive leather, artwork that looked museum quality hanging on walls painted in deep charcoal. Everything spoke of money, not new money trying to prove itself, but old money that didn't need to announce its presence. I stood frozen just inside the door, still clutching my divorce papers, acutely aware of the dirty water dripping from my shoes onto floors that probably cost more per square foot than my entire nursing school tuition. "Don't," Vincenzo said, watching me. He'd shrugged off his suit jacket, draping it over a chair with careless grace. Underneath, his white shirt was pristine, tailored so perfectly it might have been painted on. "Don't apologize for existing here either. I'm ruining your floors. Floors can be cleaned." He moved to a bar cart in the corner, crystal decanters catching the light. "Sit, please." I sat on the edge of a leather sofa that probably cost more than my car. Daniel's car now. The papers crinkled in my lap, and I set them on the glass coffee table, spreading them out to dry. Evidence of my failure laid bare in this temple of success. Vincenzo returned with 2 glasses of amber liquid, whiskey, from the smell. He handed me one and sat across from me. Not beside me, I noticed, giving me space. The consideration felt deliberate. "Drink," he said. "You look like you need it." I did. The whiskey burned going down, warmth spreading through my chest. Good whiskey. The kind that didn't taste like punishment. I took another sip. "Better?" he asked. "Yes." I looked at him over the rim of my glass. In the soft lighting of the penthouse, his features seemed less sharp, though no less dangerous. "Why am I here, really? And don't say it's just kindness. People like you don't just pick up people like me off the street. People like me." His mouth curved slightly. "What kind of person do you think I am, Elena?" "Rich, powerful." I glanced at the rigid driver who'd positioned himself by the door like a sentinel. "Protected. The kind of person who has drivers who carry guns and hotel staff who say your name like a prayer. Observant." He swirled his whiskey, watching the liquid catch the light. "Anything else?" I thought of the way he'd asked about Casa Rossi, the darkness in his voice, the monogrammed handkerchief around my palm, the ring on his finger, the way everyone seemed to know and fear him in equal measure. "Dangerous," I said quietly. "Yes." He met my eyes directly, no shame or denial. "I am dangerous. Does that frighten you?" It should have. Every rational part of my brain screamed that I should be terrified. But sitting there in his penthouse, drinking his expensive whiskey with my divorce papers drying on his coffee table, I felt the strangest sense of calm. "No," I admitted. "Not of you. Not right now. Anyway." Something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe, or respect. He leaned back in his chair, studying me with those dark, unreadable eyes. "You're not what I expected," he said finally. "What did you expect?" "Tears. Hysteria. More questions about who I am, what I want from you." He took a slow sip of his whiskey. "Instead, you're sitting here, ruining my floors and calling me dangerous with wet divorce papers and blood on your hands, quite literally." I looked at the makeshift bandage. His handkerchief, now thoroughly stained. The bleeding had stopped, but the fabric was ruined. "I cried plenty already," I said. "And I'm a nurse. I've seen enough truly dangerous situations to know the difference between actual threat and," I gestured vaguely between us. "Whatever this is. And what is this, in your professional opinion?" "I don't know yet." The whiskey was making me bolder, or maybe it was just that I had nothing left to lose. "But you had a reason for bringing me here. I'd like to know what it is." Vincenzo set down his glass with deliberate care. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and the movement brought him closer to me. Not threatening. There was still careful distance between us, but intimate. Intentional. "Casa Rossi," he said. "The restaurant where your ex-husband is getting married tomorrow. Do you know who owns it?" "No." "I do." His voice had gone very quiet, very still. "Through several holding companies and intermediaries, but ultimately, it's mine. Along with 7 other restaurants, 3 hotels, 2 construction companies, and various other interests in this city." Understanding crept up my spine like ice water. The expensive suit, the deference, the driver with the gun, the way he'd known exactly which restaurant Daniel had chosen. "You're not just rich," I said slowly. "You're Vincenzo Marchesi." He said his full name like a confession. And yes, before you ask, I am exactly what you're thinking. My family has controlled certain enterprises in this city for 3 generations. Legitimate businesses now mostly, but the roots go deep. Old habits, old connections, old debts that still need to be paid. Mafia. He was saying he was mafia without saying the word. I should have run. Should have thrown down the whiskey glass and fled out that door, away from this beautiful, dangerous man who just admitted to being part of organized crime. Instead, I asked, "Why tell me?" "Because you asked for honesty, and because—" He paused, something vulnerable flickering across his features before the mask settled back in place. "Because when I saw you on those courthouse steps, kneeling in that puddle with your life falling apart around you, something in me recognized something in you." "What?" "Betrayal." The word came out hard, sharp-edged. "I know that look, Elena. I've worn it myself. Someone took what was yours, smiled while they did it, and left you with nothing but papers and pain." His hand moved to his whiskey glass, gripping it tight enough that his knuckles went white. "My wife," he continued, his voice carefully controlled. "Ex-wife now. She left me for my second-in-command. A man I trusted with my life, my business, my family. They'd been together for a year before I found out. She'd been feeding him information, helping him steal from me, planning to take everything. When I discovered it, he trailed off, jaw tight. Let's say it ended poorly for him, for both of them. Did you—" I couldn't finish the question. "Kill him?" Vincenzo's smile was cold. "No, though many thought I should have. Instead, I took everything that mattered to him. His position, his money, his reputation. Left him with nothing, just as he'd tried to do to me. My wife, I divorced. Quickly, quietly, and with enough lawyers to ensure she got nothing but her life and a one-way ticket out of this city." He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw the truth beneath the expensive suit and dangerous reputation. He was hurt. Still bleeding from betrayals that probably happened years ago. "So when I saw you today," he said softly, "I saw myself, and I thought, maybe this time, someone doesn't have to go through it alone." The admission hung between us, raw and honest. I took another sip of whiskey, buying time to think. Everything about this was insane. Accepting help from a mafia boss I'd met hours ago. Sitting in his penthouse, drinking his whiskey, listening to him confess murders he'd considered committing. But Daniel was marrying Sofia tomorrow, in Vincenzo's restaurant, and here was a dangerous man offering me— what? Revenge? Company? A way to not feel so completely, devastatingly alone? "What do you want from me?" I asked. "Tonight? Nothing. You sleep in the guest room, wake up tomorrow and decide what you want to do next. If you want to leave, my driver takes you wherever you need to go. No strings, no expectations. And if I don't want to leave—" His eyes darkened with something that made my pulse quicken. "Then we discuss possibilities." "Such as?" "Such as the fact that your ex-husband is getting married tomorrow in my restaurant. Such as the fact that I have considerable resources at my disposal. Such as the fact that you look like you could use someone on your side for once." He stood, moving to the windows overlooking the city. "Such as the fact that I find myself very interested in getting to know you better, Elena Morrison, and not just because we share similar scars." I joined him at the window, standing close enough to feel the heat radiating from his body. Below us, the city sprawled in all directions, millions of people living their lives. And here we were, 2 broken people considering something that felt both inevitable and insane. "I'm not looking for revenge," I said, though I wasn't sure that was entirely true. "No?" He glanced at me, one eyebrow raised. "Then what are you looking for?" "I don't know." I pressed my palm against the cool glass, feeling the city's pulse through it. This morning I woke up married, unhappy but married. By noon I was divorced. By evening I was unemployed. And now I'm standing in a penthouse with a man who just told me he's mafia, drinking whiskey that probably costs more than my weekly salary used to. And I can't remember the last time I felt this— alive. "Alive," he repeated, moving closer. Close enough that I could feel his breath on my neck. "That's good. Being alive is good, is it?" I turned to face him, and suddenly we were inches apart, his dark eyes boring into mine. Because right now, alive feels dangerous. "I told you," His voice dropped lower, intimate and rough. I am dangerous, but not to you, Elena. Never to you. The promise in those words made something in my chest tighten. He reached out slowly, giving me time to pull away, and brushed a strand of damp hair from my face. His fingers lingered at my temple, warm and gentle despite the calluses I'd felt earlier. You're exhausted, he said, though his hand didn't move. Let me show you to your room. Tomorrow, after you've rested, we can talk about what comes next. He was right. Exhaustion was pulling at me like a tide, the adrenaline of the day finally crashing. I nodded, and he guided me down a hallway, his hand once again at the small of my back. The guest room was smaller than the main living space, but no less luxurious. A massive bed dominated the room, covered in white linens that looked impossibly soft. An ensuite bathroom visible through an open door, marble and chrome gleaming. There are clothes in the closet, Vincenzo said from the doorway. My sister stays here sometimes. You're similar in size. Help yourself to whatever you need. Shower, sleep, breathe. Your sister, I said, turning to face him. She won't mind me wearing her things? Isabella lives in Milan now, and no, she won't mind. She'd probably insist. He smiled slightly. She's always trying to save people. You'd like her. Thank you, I said, and meant it. For all of this. I know it's crazy, and I know I should probably be more suspicious of your motives, but today was hard enough without adding paranoia. He finished. I understand. Sleep, Elena. We'll figure out the rest tomorrow. He started to close the door, then paused. Elena? Yes? That man who let you go, who chose someone else over you, who made you doubt yourself. His dark eyes burned with an intensity that made my breath catch. He's the fool. And tomorrow, if you want, I'll make sure he knows it. The door closed before I could respond, leaving me alone in the quiet luxury of the guest room. I stood there for a long moment, processing everything. 24 hours ago, I'd been married. Now I was standing in a Mafia boss's penthouse, wearing his handkerchief around my wounded hand, considering possibilities that terrified and thrilled me in equal measure. I showered in water hot enough to scald, washing away the courthouse and the puddle in Daniel's final words. In the closet, I found silk pajamas, black, expensive, smelling faintly of lavender. Isabella's, presumably. They fit perfectly. The bed was as soft as it looked. I sank into it, my body finally relaxing after being taut with tension for months, years maybe. How long had I been just surviving instead of living? Sleep pulled at me, but my mind kept returning to Vincenzo. To his dark eyes and careful hands. To the way he'd looked at me like I mattered. Like I was worth saving, when Daniel had looked at me like I was invisible. To the promise in his voice, never to you. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from Rachel asking where I was. I sent back a simple, safe. We'll explain tomorrow. Then I turned off the phone and let the darkness take me. I dreamed of courthouse steps and expensive suits, of handkerchiefs stained with blood and whiskey that burned like absolution. I dreamed of a man with dangerous eyes promising things I shouldn't want but couldn't help craving. And somewhere in those dreams, I heard Vincenzo's voice. Tomorrow, if you want, I'll make sure he knows it. Tomorrow. Tomorrow, Daniel would marry Sophia. And tomorrow I would wake up in a Mafia boss's penthouse and decide what kind of person I wanted to become. The kind who walked away from danger, or the kind who walked straight toward it. Consequences be damned. I woke to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows and the smell of coffee. For one disoriented moment, I thought I was still married, still in the house Daniel and I had shared. Then reality crashed back, the divorce, the puddle, Vincenzo's dark eyes promising things I shouldn't want. I sat up. Isabella's silk pajamas sliding against my skin. The bedside clock read 9:47 a.m. I'd slept for nearly 12 hours straight, the kind of deep, dreamless sleep I hadn't experienced in months, maybe years. My phone showed 17 missed calls from Rachel and a string of increasingly frantic texts. I sent her a quick message. I'm okay. Really. We'll call you later. Promise. Then I saw it. A text from an unknown number, time-stamped at 6:32 a.m. Coffee is ready when you are. We have things to discuss. V. My stomach fluttered. I got up, padding barefoot to the bathroom where I found new toiletries still in their packaging. Toothbrush, hairbrush, expensive skincare products I'd never be able to afford. Everything I needed. Like he'd anticipated exactly what I'd require. I dressed in the clothes I'd found last night. Dark jeans that fit perfectly, a soft cashmere sweater in deep burgundy. Looking at myself in the mirror, I barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked rested, put together. Nothing like the broken person who'd knelt in a puddle yesterday. Following the smell of coffee, I found Vincenzo in the kitchen, a massive space of marble countertops and professional-grade appliances. He stood at the espresso machine, dressed more casually than yesterday in black slacks and a charcoal Henley that hugged his frame. His hair was slightly damp, like he'd recently showered. He looked up when I entered, and something in his expression softened. "You slept." Like the dead. I accepted the coffee cup he offered, our fingers brushing. The same electricity from yesterday sparked between us. "Thank you. For everything. The room, the clothes, the—" "Stop thanking me." He leaned against the counter, his own cup cradled in his hands. "I told you last night. No obligations. You owe me nothing. Then why do I feel like I owe you everything?" His jaw tightened. "Because you're not used to people doing things for you without expecting payment. But I'm not Daniel, Elena. When I give something, I give it freely." The use of Daniel's name sent a jolt through me. Today was the wedding. Vincenzo saw my expression change. "It starts at 2:00, Casa Rossi. I received the confirmation from my manager this morning. They've reserved the private dining room, ordered champagne, arranged for flowers." His voice was carefully neutral. "Sophia requested white roses. Your ex-husband's credit card was declined twice before it finally went through." I set down my coffee cup before I could drop it. "You're having them watched. I'm informed about everything that happens in my establishments." He moved closer, bringing the scent of cedar and something darker with him. "But yes, after last night I made some calls. I wanted to know exactly what you were walking away from. And your ex-husband is an idiot who's about to marry a woman who's been stealing from him. Sophia has expensive tastes and a gambling problem. She's accumulated $30,000 in debt over the past 6 months. Money she's been taking from your joint accounts, your savings, anywhere she could access." His eyes were hard. "She's not marrying him for love, Elena. She's marrying him for access to whatever's left." The information should have shocked me. Instead, it just made a bitter kind of sense. "How did you—" "I have resources." He waved a hand dismissively. "People who owe me favors, connections in places most people don't think about. When I want to know something, I learn it. And I wanted to know everything about the man who hurt you." The possessiveness in his tone made my pulse quicken. "Why?" "Because—" He stopped, jaw working like he was choosing his words carefully. "Because from the moment I saw you yesterday, something in me shifted. I can't explain it. I've spent years building walls, keeping people at a distance, trusting no one. But you—" He set down his cup and moved into my space. Close enough that I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes. "You make me want to tear those walls down. You make me want to protect something again. To care about someone other than myself and my family. And that terrifies me almost as much as it compels me." My breath caught. "Vincenzo, let me finish." His hand came up, cupping my face with surprising gentleness. "I'm not a good man, Elena. I've done things that would make you run if you knew the details. I've hurt people, destroyed lives, made choices that haunt me. But when I look at you, I want to be better. I want to be the kind of man who deserves the way you looked at me last night. Like maybe I wasn't a monster after all." "You're not a monster," I whispered. "No?" His thumb traced my cheekbone. "Then what am I?" "Dangerous. Damaged. Probably more than a little broken." I reached up, covering his hand with mine. "But not a monster. Monsters don't offer kindness to strangers. They don't give without expecting. They don't—" My voice cracked. "They don't look at me like I'm worth something." "You're worth everything," he said fiercely. "And I'm going to prove it to you." Before I could ask what he meant, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his expression darkening. "Marco, my driver from yesterday. He's watching Casa Rossi. The wedding party just arrived to set up." Reality crashed back. Daniel was there, right now, preparing to marry the woman he'd chosen over me. In just a few hours, He'd say vows to her the same way he'd once said them to me. I should go, I said, pulling back. I can't stay here while that's happening. I can't just hide. Who said anything about hiding? Vincenzo's smile was sharp, dangerous. I have a better idea. What kind of idea? The kind where you don't run away from this. The kind where you walk in there with your head high and show them exactly what they lost. He pulled out his phone, typing rapidly. I'm going to make a reservation. For 2. For 1:30 p.m. My heart hammered. You want to go to the wedding? I want to take you to lunch at one of my finest restaurants, if we happen to be there when your ex-husband arrives for his ceremony? He shrugged, but there was nothing casual about the gesture. Well, timing is everything. That's insane. Yes. He stepped closer again, backing me against the counter. His hands came down on either side of me, caging me in without touching. But you didn't come here for sanity, did you? You came here because something in you recognized something in me, because you're tired of being invisible, of being the good girl who follows the rules while everyone else takes what they want, because maybe, just maybe, you want to see what happens when you stop managing and start living. He was right. God help me. He was right. I'd spent 7 years being the perfect wife, the dedicated nurse, the woman who made herself smaller so everyone else could be comfortable. And where had it gotten me? Divorced, jobless, replaced by a woman who'd smiled to my face while stealing my life. If I do this, I said slowly, if I walk in there with you, what then? What does that make me? Mine. The word hung between us, heavy with promise and threat in equal measure. His eyes burned into mine, waiting for my answer. I'm not... I started, but he cut me off. I know. You're not ready for what that word means. Not really, but you will be. Because I'm not letting you go, Elena. Not now that I've found you. Not now that I know what it feels like to want something other than power and revenge. His hand came up, tilting my chin so I couldn't look away. So yes, walk into that restaurant with me. Let him see you with someone who knows your worth. Let her see that she didn't break you. And then, after, we'll talk about what comes next. And if I say no, then Marco drives you wherever you want to go and you never hear from me again. His thumb brushed my lower lip. But you won't say no, because you want this as much as I do. You want to stop being the victim of your own story. He was reading me too easily, seeing through every defense I'd built. It should have frightened me. Instead, it felt like relief. Like finally, someone saw all of me and didn't turn away. Okay? I breathed. Let's do it. His smile was slow, satisfied. Dangerous. Good. Now, we need to get you ready. Isabella's clothes are nice, but for this, you need to look devastating. 2 hours later, I stood in front of the full-length mirror in Vincenzo's bedroom, barely recognizing myself. The dress had arrived within 30 minutes of his phone call, midnight blue silk that hugged my curves and fell to just above my knees. Elegant, expensive, the kind of dress I'd never have bought for myself. Matching heels added 3 inches to my height. A stylist had appeared to do my hair and makeup, transforming my hospital shift exhaustion into something that looked almost glamorous. I looked like someone who belonged in Vincenzo's world. Someone powerful. Someone who couldn't be broken. Perfect, Vincenzo said from the doorway. He'd changed too. A 3-piece navy suit that probably cost more than my car used to. His dark hair styled back from his face. He looked dangerous and beautiful and completely in control. He crossed to me, pulling a small box from his pocket. One more thing. Inside was a necklace. Simple, elegant, a single diamond pendant that caught the light like captured fire. He moved behind me, fastening it around my neck. His fingers lingered at my nape, warm and possessive. Now, he murmured against my ear, you're ready. Marco was waiting with the Mercedes. Vincenzo handed me into the back seat, sliding in beside me. His hand found mine, fingers interlacing, and the gesture felt more intimate than it should have. Second thoughts? He asked as we pulled away from the hotel. About 1,000. I squeezed his hand. But I'm not backing out. Good. He brought my hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to my knuckles that sent heat racing up my arm. Because I have plans for you, Elena Morrison. And they're all going to start with watching your ex-husband realize what a fool he's been. The drive to Casa Rossi took 20 minutes. 20 minutes of Vincenzo's thumb stroking circles on my palm, of stolen glances and building tension. 20 minutes to prepare myself for seeing Daniel again, but nothing could have prepared me for the reality. Casa Rossi was beautiful, old-world elegance mixed with modern luxury. A hostess in elegant black greeted us at the door, her eyes widening when she saw Vincenzo. "Mr. Marchesi, your table is ready." She didn't ask for a reservation confirmation. Clearly, when Vincenzo Marchesi wanted a table, he got one. She led us through the main dining room. White tablecloths, crystal chandeliers, soft music, and there, visible through glass doors to the private dining room, I saw them. Daniel, dressed in a new suit I didn't recognize. Sophia beside him in a white dress that was trying too hard to be bridal. They were laughing about something, his hand on her waist in a way that used to be reserved for me. Our table was positioned perfectly, close enough to the private room that we'd be impossible to miss, far enough that we had privacy. Vincenzo had planned this with military precision. "Breathe," he murmured as he held out my chair. "You're in control here, not him." I sat, and Vincenzo took the seat beside me, not across, beside, angling his body toward mine in a way that screamed intimacy to anyone watching. A waiter appeared with champagne. Expensive, cold, perfect. Vincenzo raised his glass. "To new beginnings," he said, his dark eyes locked on mine. "And to men who don't appreciate what they have until it's too late." I clinked my glass against his, and that's when it happened. Daniel looked up. Through the glass doors, across the dining room, his eyes found mine. The shock on his face was almost comical. His mouth literally fell open. Sophia followed his gaze, her expression shifting from confusion to recognition to something that looked like fear. They saw me. Saw the dress, the jewelry, the man beside me who looked like he could buy and sell them both without thinking twice. Vincenzo's hand found my thigh under the table, a warm, possessive weight. "Showtime," he whispered, and raised his champagne glass in Daniel's direction. A mock toast to the groom. The look on Daniel's face was everything I didn't know I needed. Daniel was walking toward us. I watched him cross the restaurant floor, his face cycling through shock, confusion, and something that looked dangerously close to anger. Sophia trailed behind him, her white dress rustling, her expression tight with worry. Vincenzo's hand squeezed my thigh gently. "Steady," he murmured. "Remember, you're in control." Daniel reached our table, his eyes darting between me and Vincenzo. Up close, I could see the changes 6 months had wrought. New watch, expensive haircut, cologne I didn't recognize. He'd reinvented himself for her, become someone I didn't know. "Elena." My name came out strangled. "What are you doing here?" "Having lunch." I kept my voice level, calm. "Is that a problem?" No, but..." He looked at Vincenzo, and I saw the moment recognition clicked. "You're Vincenzo Marchesi. You own this place." Among other things. Vincenzo didn't stand, didn't offer his hand. He simply looked at Daniel with the kind of cold assessment that made my ex-husband physically step back. "And you are?" "Daniel Morrison. He faltered. "I was Elena's husband." "Was?" Vincenzo said the word like he was tasting it. "Yes, I heard about that. Congratulations on your wedding, by the way. Today, isn't it?" Daniel's face flushed. Sophia had reached us now, her hand clutching Daniel's arm with white-knuckled intensity. Up close, I could see the desperation in her eyes, the kind that came from knowing you were in over your head. "Elena," Sophia said, her voice too bright. "What a surprise. You look different. Do I?" I took a sip of champagne, letting the moment stretch. "I suppose divorce agrees with me." The barb hit home. Sophia's smile wavered, Daniel's jaw clenched. "Look," Daniel said, his voice dropping. "I don't know what this is, but today is supposed to be special. Can't you just what?" I set down my glass carefully. "Just disappear? Just make myself invisible so you don't have to feel uncomfortable? I'm having lunch, Daniel, in a public restaurant. I have as much right to be here as you do." "Actually," Vincenzo interjected smoothly, "she has considerably more right. As my guest, Elena has access to any of my establishments, anytime she wishes. Whereas you..." He pulled out his phone, scrolling through it with deliberate slowness. "You have a reservation for the private dining room until 4 p.m. After that, I'm afraid you'll need to leave." The implication was clear. Vincenzo controlled this space. He could end Daniel's wedding with a single word. Daniel's face went from red to pale. You can't be serious. I'm always serious about my properties. Vincenzo's smile was razor sharp. But don't worry. As long as you keep your celebration contained to the private room and don't disturb the other guests, you're welcome to proceed. Though, I must say, his eyes moved to Sophia with cold assessment. Interesting choice of venue for a second wedding. One might think you'd want to avoid restaurants owned by people with connections. The word connections hung in the air like a threat. Sophia's grip on Daniel's arm tightened, her face going white. We should go, she whispered. Daniel, let's just go back to... No. Daniel's voice was sharp. He looked at me, and I saw something ugly in his expression. Possessiveness. Anger that I'd moved on before he'd expected. What is this, Elena? You didn't waste any time, did you? One day after the divorce, and you're already... What? With him? The accusation in his voice ignited something hot and dangerous in my chest. Careful. Vincenzo's voice went very quiet, very cold. How you speak to her. Or what? Daniel's bravado was crumbling, but he pushed forward anyway. You'll have me thrown out of your restaurant? I'm a paying customer. You can't... I can do whatever I want. This is my establishment. My city. Vincenzo stood slowly, unfolding to his full height. He was taller than Daniel, broader, and every inch of him radiated controlled violence. And more importantly, she is under my protection. So yes, I suggest you choose your next words very, very carefully. The temperature of the entire restaurant seemed to drop. I saw other diners glancing our way, saw the hostess whispering urgently into her phone. Marco had materialized near the entrance, his hand resting near his hip in that familiar way. This was spiraling out of control. Stop. I stood, placing my hand on Vincenzo's arm. His muscles were coiled tight under my touch, ready to strike. It's fine. Daniel, go back to your wedding. I'm not here to ruin anything. I'm just living my life. Just like you're living yours. Daniel stared at me like he'd never seen me before. You've changed. Yes, I said simply. I have. Turns out being divorced, unemployed, and replaced by the woman who smiled at me every morning while sleeping with my husband does that to a person. Sophia flinched. Good. For what it's worth, I continued, looking at her directly. I hope you're happy. I hope you love him enough to make this worth it. Because if you're just doing this for money or security or whatever reason you had for destroying my marriage, you're going to be very disappointed. Daniel gives up on things. It's what he does. That's not fair, Daniel protested weakly. Isn't it? You gave up on us the moment things got hard. The moment I started working extra shifts to save for the house you wanted, to build the life you said you needed. I made myself invisible trying to be what you wanted, and you still chose someone else. I felt Vincenzo's hand settle on my lower back, grounding me. So no, I don't think it's unfair. I think it's honest. Maybe for the first time in years. Silence stretched between us. Daniel's face had gone through another series of expressions, finally landing on something that might have been shame. Sophia just looked scared. We should go, she said again, tugging on Daniel's arm. Please, let's just go. This time he listened. They turned and walked back toward the private dining room, Sophia's white dress trailing behind her like a surrender flag. I sank back into my chair, my hands shaking with adrenaline. Vincenzo sat beside me, his hand finding mine under the table. Are you all right? He asked quietly. I don't know. I laughed, and it came out slightly hysterical. I just confronted my ex-husband on his wedding day while sitting with a Mafia boss who threatened him in the middle of a restaurant. I don't think all right covers it. You were magnificent. His thumb stroked the inside of my wrist, finding my racing pulse. Watching you stand up to him, watching you refuse to be diminished, Elena, you have no idea how incredible you are. I felt like I was going to throw up. That's called being brave. He lifted my hand to his lips, kissing my knuckles like he had in the car. Bravery isn't the absence of fear. It's doing what needs to be done despite it. The waiter appeared, tactfully pretending nothing unusual had happened. We ordered, or rather, Vincenzo ordered for both of us, rattling off dishes in Italian that made the waiter's eyes light up. You speak Italian, I said when the waiter left. My mother insisted. She was born in Sicily, came here when she was 20. She wanted her children to remember where we came from. Something softened in his expression. She would have liked you. She always said the strongest steel was forged in the hottest fire. She passed 5 years ago. Cancer. He took a sip of his champagne. My father followed 6 months later. Heart attack officially. But I think he just didn't want to live without her. 50 years of marriage, and he couldn't imagine a world where she wasn't in it. I'm sorry. Don't be. They had something rare. Something worth dying for. His dark eyes found mine. I used to think I'd never find that. After my wife's betrayal, I was certain I didn't want to, but then you found a woman crying in a puddle with soggy divorce papers. Then I found you. He said it with such certainty that my breath caught. And suddenly, I'm reconsidering everything I thought I knew about what I wanted. The food arrived. Beautiful, aromatic, the kind of meal I'd only ever dreamed about. We ate slowly, stealing glances at the private dining room where Daniel's wedding was presumably proceeding. Every so often I'd catch him looking out at us, his expression unreadable. He's watching, Vincenzo murmured, cutting into his steak. He can't stop watching. Do you know why? Because he's confused? Because he's realizing what he lost. Vincenzo leaned closer, his voice dropping to something intimate and rough. Because he's seeing you the way you should have always been seen. As someone valuable, someone worth protecting. Someone who doesn't need to make herself smaller for anyone. His hand covered mine on the table. And because he's seeing you with me, and he's smart enough to know what that means. What does it mean? That you're untouchable now, that anyone who tries to hurt you will have to go through me, that you're not alone anymore, Elena. Not if you don't want to be. My throat tightened with emotion. You don't even know me. Not really. We met yesterday. I know enough. I know you're brave enough to face the man who broke you on what should be his happiest day. I know you're strong enough to sleep in a stranger's penthouse because you had nowhere else to go. I know you're honest enough to call me dangerous to my face. He turned my hand over, tracing the lines of my palm, and I know that when I look at you, I feel something I haven't felt in years. Hope. The possibility of something good in a life that's been dark for too long. Vincenzo, I'm not asking you to love me. I'm not even asking you to stay. I'm just asking you to give this, whatever this is between us, a chance. Let me show you what it's like to be with someone who sees your worth. Let me prove that not all men are like him. Before I could respond, raised voices erupted from the private dining room. Through the glass, I saw Daniel and Sophia arguing, her hands gesturing wildly, his face red with anger. Then Sophia was grabbing her purse, tears streaming down her face, rushing toward the exit. She passed our table without looking, her white dress streaming behind her. A moment later, Daniel followed, catching her arm near the door. Sophia, wait, I can't do this. Her voice carried across the restaurant. I thought you had money, Daniel. Real money. But you're broke. Those credit cards that kept declining, that's because there's nothing left. And now she pointed at me, sitting there with him, looking like that. And you can't stop staring at her like you made a mistake. I didn't. Sophia, that's not. You still love her. Sophia's voice broke. You divorced her, and you still love her, and I'm just the idiot who thought I could replace her. She wrenched her arm free and ran out of the restaurant. Daniel stood frozen in the doorway, his wedding day imploding around him. Then his eyes found mine across the room. The look on his face was devastating. Regret, realization, loss all mixed together. Vincenzo's hand tightened on mine. Do you want to leave? No, I said, surprising myself. I want to finish my meal. I want to enjoy this beautiful food in this beautiful restaurant with you. I want to prove that he doesn't control my life anymore. Vincenzo's smile was fierce, proud. That's my girl. Daniel stood in the doorway for another moment, then turned and walked out, following Sophia into whatever future they'd destroyed together. I watched him go and felt nothing. No satisfaction, no vindication. Just a quiet sense of closure, of a chapter ending exactly as it was always meant to. It's over, I said softly. No. Vincenzo brought my hand to his lips again, his dark eyes burning into mine. It's just beginning. Bloco 5, Final. We stayed at Casa Rossi for another hour, finishing our meal in comfortable silence punctuated by easy conversation. Vincenzo told me about his restaurants, his legitimate businesses, the life he'd built from his family's complicated legacy. I told him about nursing school, about the patients I'd loved caring for, about the life I'd thought I was building with Daniel. It felt natural, easy, like we'd known each other far longer than 36 hours. When we finally left, the private dining room stood empty. White roses wilting in their vases, champagne bottles unopened. The ghost of a wedding that never happened. Marco drove us back to the palazzo in comfortable silence. Vincenzo's hand never left mine, his thumb tracing absent patterns on my skin that made thinking difficult. "Come upstairs," he said when we arrived. Not a demand, an invitation. I went. The penthouse looked different in the afternoon light. Warmer, less intimidating. Vincenzo shrugged off his suit jacket, loosening his tie, and suddenly he looked less like a dangerous mafia boss and more like just a man. A beautiful, complicated, dangerous man who'd somehow decided I was worth his protection. "What happens now?" I asked, standing in the middle of his living room, still wearing the midnight blue dress that had given me courage. "Now, we talk about what you want." He poured us both whiskey, becoming our ritual, apparently. "Your job, your housing, your future. I can help with all of it, if you'll let me." "Why?" I accepted the glass, needing something to do with my hands. "Why do you want to help me so badly?" He was quiet for a long moment, staring into his whiskey like it held answers. "When my wife betrayed me, when my second-in-command tried to destroy everything I'd built, I became cold, closed off. I told myself I didn't need anyone, that trust was a weakness I couldn't afford. I built an empire on fear and respect, but somewhere along the way, I forgot what it felt like to actually care about something. Someone." He set down his glass and moved toward me, each step deliberate. "Then I saw you on those courthouse steps, and something in me woke up. Something I thought had died with my parents, with my marriage, with every betrayal I'd endured. You reminded me that there are still people worth protecting, worth fighting for. Worth..." He stopped in front of me, so close I could feel his heat. "Worth risking everything for. You don't know me well enough to risk anything." "Don't I?" His hand came up, cupping my face with that same gentle possessiveness. "I know you're brave. I know you're strong. I know you face your fears head-on instead of running. I know that when you look at me, you don't see a monster. You see a man. And that's more than anyone has seen in a very long time. Vincenzo, let me help you, Elena. Let me give you the resources to rebuild your life. A job at one of my hospitals. I own 3 of them, and they're always looking for qualified nurses. An apartment, fully furnished, in a safe building. Time to figure out who you want to be now that you're free." His thumb traced my cheekbone. "No strings, no expectations, just the opportunity to start over." "There are always strings," I whispered. "Not with me. I'm not asking you to be mine, not yet. I'm asking you to let me take care of you until you can take care of yourself." His forehead touched mine, and the intimacy of the gesture made my chest ache. "And then, when you're ready, when you've had time to heal and discover who you are without him, maybe you'll let me take you to dinner. A real date. No ex-husbands, no ruined weddings. Just you and me, figuring out if this feeling between us is real." Tears burned behind my eyes. What if I'm broken? What if Daniel was right and I'm just not enough? Then he's a fool, and I'm the luckiest man alive. Vincenzo's voice was fierce. "You're not broken, Elena. You're rebuilding. And I want to be there to watch you become whoever you're meant to be, because I have a feeling that woman is going to be absolutely magnificent." The tears spilled over. He caught them with his thumbs, his touch infinitely gentle for hands that had undoubtedly done violent things. "Say yes," he murmured. "Say you'll let me help you. Say you'll give us a chance." I thought about Daniel, about 7 years of making myself smaller. I thought about Sophia, about betrayal and courthouse steps, and sleeping in a stranger's penthouse because I had nowhere else to go. I thought about the woman I'd been yesterday, broken, lost, invisible. And I thought about the woman I'd been today, brave enough to face her ex-husband, strong enough to demand respect, powerful enough to walk away from a ruined wedding with her head high. That woman had been born in Vincenzo's presence. Maybe she'd always been there, buried under years of diminishing myself. But he'd seen her. He'd called her forth. Yes, I breathed. Yes to all of it. His smile was brilliant, transforming his entire face. Then his mouth was on mine, and the world narrowed to the taste of whiskey and the heat of his body, and the way his hands framed my face like I was something precious. The kiss was slow, thorough, devastating. He kissed me like he had all the time in the world, like nothing else mattered but this moment, this connection. When he finally pulled back, we were both breathing hard. I should go slow, he said, his voice rough. Give you time. But Elena, I don't want slow. I fisted my hands in his shirt, pulling him back. I've been going slow for 7 years. I've been careful and proper and good. I didn't know how to finish the sentence. Tell me. His hand slid to my waist, pulling me flush against him. Tell me what you want. I want to feel alive. I want to stop being invisible. The word stuck in my throat. Me. He finished, his eyes dark with want. You want me. Yes. The admission felt like freedom. God help me, yes. He kissed me again. Harder this time. More demanding. His hands mapped my body through the silk dress, learning my curves, claiming territory. I kissed him back with everything I had. All the loneliness, all the hurt, all the desperate need to be seen and wanted and valued. We stumbled toward his bedroom, a tangle of hands and mouths and whispered words in Italian I didn't understand but felt in my bones. He laid me on his bed, massive, dark sheets, the smell of him everywhere, and looked at me like I was the answer to every question he'd ever asked. Last chance, he said, his voice strained with control. Tell me to stop, and I will. Tell me this is too fast, and I'll wait. But Elena, if you say yes now, if you let me have you, I'm not letting go. Ever. Do you understand? I'll be yours, and you'll be mine. And I'll spend every day proving that you made the right choice. The possessiveness should have scared me. Instead, it made something deep inside me settle, like coming home. I understand, I whispered. And I'm saying yes. 3 months later, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror in my new apartment, the one Vincenzo had helped me find in a safe building with a doorman and security that made Fort Knox look casual. My apartment, my space, the first place that was truly mine in years. The pregnancy test on the counter showed 2 pink lines. I'd suspected for a few weeks. The exhaustion, the morning nausea, the way my scrubs had started fitting differently. But seeing the confirmation made it real. I was pregnant. With Vincenzo Marchese's baby. We'd been together for 3 months, 3 incredible, terrifying, passionate months. He'd kept his promises, got me a job at St. Catherine's Hospital, one of his facilities, where the head nurse had welcomed me with open arms. Helped me furnish my apartment, never pushing to move in, giving me space while making it clear he was always available, taken me to dinners, introduced me to his family. His sister Isabella had flown in from Milan and declared us soulmates within 20 minutes of meeting. We'd navigated the complexity of his world together. I'd learned about his businesses, both legitimate and the shadows that lingered from his family's past. I'd met his associates, learned to read the subtle signals of power and respect, and slowly, carefully, I'd let him into my heart. I loved him. Terrifyingly, completely. I loved him. And now I was carrying his child. The sound of a key in the lock made me jump. Vincenzo had started keeping clothes here, had his own key. We were together most nights, though he'd been careful not to rush me, always asking if I was sure, always giving me the choice to say no. Elena? His voice carried from the living room. I brought dinner from Casa Rossi. That pasta you love. He appeared in the doorway, still in his work clothes. Today's version was all black, making him look like a beautiful shadow. His eyes found mine in the mirror, then dropped to the test on the counter. Time stopped. His face went through a series of expressions too fast to track. Shock, realization, fear, and then something that looked like wonder. Elena. He said my name like a prayer. Are you... I'm pregnant. The words came out steadier than I expected. About 6 weeks, I think, from that first night, probably. When we stopped being careful because we were too desperate for each other to think straight, he moved toward me slowly, like I might startle. His hands came to rest on my waist, sliding around to splay across my still flat stomach. "A baby," he whispered. "Our baby. I know it's fast. I know we haven't talked about this. I know. I want it." His voice was fierce, certain. "I want this baby. I want you. I want everything, Elena. I have since the moment I saw you. Vincenzo, marry me." I blinked. "What? Marry me?" He turned me to face him, his dark eyes burning with intensity. "Not because you're pregnant, not because you need protection or security, but because I love you, because these 3 months with you have been the best of my life, because when I imagine my future, all I see is you. You love me? Desperately. Completely. Probably from that first moment you called me dangerous and didn't run away." His hands framed my face. "I know it's fast. I know we're still learning each other. But Elena, I've never been more certain of anything. You're it for me. You and this baby. This family we're building from the ashes of our broken pasts." Tears streamed down my face, happy tears this time. "I love you too." I've been terrified to say it, terrified I was moving too fast or wanting too much, or he kissed me quiet. "Say yes. Please. Let me spend the rest of my life proving that you made the right choice. Let me give this baby my name, our family's legacy. Let me show you what it means to be loved by someone who will burn down the world to keep you safe." I thought about the woman I'd been on those courthouse steps, broken, lost, invisible. I thought about Daniel, about Sophia, about a life I'd thought I wanted that had crumbled to dust, and I thought about the woman I'd become in Vincenzo's arms, brave, strong, visible, loved not despite my scars but because of them, chosen not as a consolation, but as a prize. "Yes," I said through my tears. "Yes, I'll marry you. Yes to everything." His kiss was reverent, tender, full of promises kept and futures built. When he pulled back, he was smiling. That rare, beautiful smile that transformed his dangerous face into something almost innocent. "I'm going to be a father," he said, wonder in his voice. "And I'm going to be a mother." I laughed, slightly hysterical. A year ago, I was a divorced nurse with $847 in my checking account and nowhere to sleep. Now I'm marrying a Mafia boss and having his baby. My life is insane. "Our life," he corrected, pulling me close. "And yes, it's insane. But it's ours. And it's real. And it's everything I never knew I needed." 6 months later, the wedding was small, intimate. Just Vincenzo's family and the few people I'd let back into my life. Rachel had cried through the entire ceremony, kept saying she knew from the moment I'd texted her that I was safe that something life-changing had happened. We married in a small chapel that Vincenzo's family had attended for generations. Me in a simple ivory dress that accommodated my growing belly. Him in another perfect suit, his eyes never leaving mine as we exchanged vows. Isabella stood as my maid of honor, already planning to move back from Milan to be near her niece or nephew. Marco, who'd become an unexpected friend, stood as best man, looking almost emotional behind his perpetually rigid expression. There was no drama, no objections, no ex-husbands crashing the ceremony. Just 2 broken people promising to build something beautiful together. The reception was at Casa Rossi. Fitting, somehow, that we celebrated in the place where everything had shifted. The private dining room where Daniel's wedding had imploded now held our celebration. White roses replaced with dark red ones that matched my bouquet. Vincenzo kept his hand on my stomach all night, feeling our daughter kick. We'd learned just last week that we were having a girl. He'd cried when the ultrasound technician told us, tears streaming down his face as he watched our baby move on the screen. "What should we name her?" I asked as we danced, his arms wrapped protectively around me. "Something strong," he murmured against my hair, "something that tells the world she's ours. That she comes from 2 people who refuse to stay broken." "Isabella," I suggested. "After your sister. And maybe Elena as a middle name, so she carries both of us." "Isabella Elena Marchesi." He tested the name, smiled. "Perfect. She'll be perfect just like her mother." "I'm not perfect." "No," he agreed. "You're real. You're brave. You're mine. That's better than perfect. Later that night, in the penthouse that had become our home, I'd moved in after the wedding, though I'd kept my apartment as a studio for when I needed space. Vincenzo held me close, his hand splayed protectively over our daughter. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked quietly. "Choosing me. Choosing this life. Never." I turned to face him, framing his beautiful, dangerous face with my hands. "You saved me, Vincenzo, not from Daniel. I could have survived that, but from myself. From a life of being invisible, of accepting less than I deserved. You saw me when no one else did. You chose me when I thought I was unchosen. You loved me when I didn't know how to love myself. You saved me too," he said fiercely. "From darkness, from isolation, from thinking I'd never have this. A family, a future, someone to come home to. You gave me everything, Elena." Our daughter kicked between us as if agreeing. I thought about courthouse steps and puddles and divorce papers. I thought about expensive handkerchiefs and midnight blue dresses and facing down the past with my head high. I thought about first kisses and pregnancy tests and wedding vows spoken in a chapel full of people who loved us. My life hadn't ended that day on the courthouse steps. It had begun. With a dangerous man who taught me I was worth danger. With a love that had been born from ashes and betrayal, and the courage to try again, with a future that looked nothing like the safe, small life I'd planned with Daniel. This future was bigger, messier, full of complications and risks and the shadowy edges of Vincenzo's world. But it was mine. We were mine. And as I fell asleep in Vincenzo Marchesi's arms, our daughter moving between us, our wedding rings catching the moonlight, I knew with absolute certainty I had made the right choice. Sometimes the best love stories start with an ending. And sometimes, being chosen by a dangerous man is exactly what it takes to find yourself.